The condition is really crazy condition.
And that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Maciek, giving Antoine Albo a run for his money. Here we go. What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder.
Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast, back again for episode 48. And this week we are talking to the CCO of the biggest production board factory in the world. Yes, Cobra. We also talked to him about life before then. We talk about the Olympics in 1984. We talk about kit evolution in the 80s. And then obviously we're talking all things Cobra, how a board is created, the process, how he works with the brands, and how everything is moving forward. We talk about sustainability and the rising costs. A super interesting podcast from the one and only Bruce Wylie.
Hey Bruce, how you doing?
Maciek, how are you, man?
I'm good. We have to, I think, tell our listeners this took a while, mostly because of my issues, but my traveling and my lack of technical ability, because things didn't really work out. But you're a busy man too, and some COVID related fires to put out at Cobra, I guess. How's that? How's life over there?
Yeah, it's been a hell of a year, I have to say. It's a hell of a 2 years, but I hope we start to see the end of it and we get this COVID thing a little bit more stable. But what a couple of years we've had, that's for sure. Tough.
Yeah. I'm really excited to have you on, not only because you're obviously basically the head of the biggest board manufacturer in the world, but also because I've invited every single Olympic champion onto this podcast, and all of them are dodging me. So let's start there. 1984. Los Angeles. Are you going in as a favorite? How much do you even know about your competitors? And paint us a little picture. What was it like going into that Olympic contest?
That's a fairly complicated story, to be honest, because it starts a couple of years before that, where there's this huge patent topic in the US. So for the Olympic Games of yachting, the Olympic Committee didn't want to use the windsurfer. They wanted to use the wing glider, which had some patent topics in the US. So there was an agreement made with the windsurfer company that they were able to do the Olympic board sailing exhibition at the same time that the windsurfer or the wing glider became the seventh Olympic class for yachting. In 83, I did both. I did the pre-Olympics on the wing glider and I did the pre-Olympics on the windsurfer. We didn't have wing gliders in Australia back then. So my mate and myself, Bobby Wilmont, we flew over to LA and figured we'd get a bit of training in on the board. But they wouldn't give us the boards. They said we'd have an unfair advantage if we were there training on the board. So we'd never seen them. And then we did the pre-Olympics. The boards arrived the day before the event. And I think I got 18th, maybe Bobby came 16th, 17th or something. Then they shipped one container to Australia for the Olympic trials. I figured I wouldn't do it. I was going to take my first trip to Hawaii, early 84. And I'd focus just on the windsurfer, which we had in Australia. We'd been racing on for years. So then I went to LA on the windsurfer. And I knew everybody in the event. It was not as formal as the yachting event. The windsurfing exhibition was in Santa Barbara and consisted of long distance, freestyle and slalom, which were some of my stronger points. Horse racing, I was doing okay at, but I was lucky enough to do well in the board sailing exhibition. In the yachting for Australia, we had a guy named Greg Hyde who finished fifth on the wing glider. And then I got a gold medal on the Olympic board sailing exhibition. Darren Hand from the USA was silver. And my friend Bobby Woolman, he got a bronze in the exhibition as well.
So officially, you cannot claim the Olympic championship, or can you? And I mean, 40 years later, almost. I mean, who cares, right? I mean, I'm going to call you an Olympic champion.
It's not the sailing Olympics or the yachting Olympics, but there was an Olympic board sailing exhibition. Tennis was an exhibition sport as well. Bit of a one-off in hindsight. We all got medals. I have a gold medal at home, so it doesn't mean much, but it was a nice thing to achieve back then. I was 18 at the time, and yeah, it was part of the growing curve, I guess.
Yeah, definitely a little trampoline, right, to a career. And windsurfing in general in the 80s. I mean, I was born in 91. And I hear all those things about 80s being like the golden era and, you know, the whole sport booming. What was the vibe like around the sport in general?
Yeah. I mean, I started in, 78, 79. I was 13. I got a board for my birthday. I started doing okay in the lighter winds in the Australian Championships. 1980, I went to the Bahamas. Looking recently in the regatta, the result sheets from back then, Mike Waltz was just in front of me. Bjorn Schrader was just behind me. I was talking to Sven last week, and Sven was there. He was a little bit behind me as well. But that was 1980, my first international event. I was 14. The guy who actually taught me to windsurf, he won the heavyweight division in the Bahamas. It was the first time an Australian won. Was a guy named Grant Long. He won the heavyweights in the Bahamas back then. From then, it was just go, 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 go. I windsurfed almost every day after school, after work. I was doing an apprenticeship for carpentry back then. I was interested in woodworking, building houses. That slowed down. I got laid off, and then I started just traveling full time. That's 83. I went to the pre-Olympics. Traveled in the US a bit, windsurfer Western Hemisphere Championships on the East Coast. I think 83 we did the World Championships in Kingston, Canada. I came second in the horse racing. And then that led into windsurfing every day at home. And then 84 going to the Olympics. Earlier in 84, I took a 3-month trip to Maui for my first step into bigger waves. We started wave sailing in Australia with my brother Jim and the local crew. But then that's really where my attention started going. I did a little bit of Division 2 racing, 85. I did Division 2 Worlds in England. And then things really changed after that. It felt a little bit like the wing glider. In Australia, we were focused on windsurfer. We didn't have wing gliders. We didn't do much Division 2 as well. Went to the Division 2 World Championships, sort of got beat up pretty bad. And but then I went to my first World Cup in Zilt. And then traveling with Phil McGain, we did Zilt, Holland and France. And by the end of that stint, we were we were into it. We were motivated. We were invited to come back from the Gastra Boys. And by 86, we were pretty much on the tour full time. Yeah, and no more Division 2, no more one design. We were turned fully onto the pro circuit in 86. Business back then was strong. The brands were booming. Salaries were there, all expenses paid, get to the events. It was the WSMA, World Manufacturers, World Sailboard Manufacturers Association was putting on the events. Somewhere in the next 2 years, that turned into a PWA, organized by the races, that turned into a PA, and things developed from there. I read that the sport probably peaks late 80s, early 90s, and consolidated a little bit since then through the 90s. And my last racing was in 97. I remember I did a pro event in Silver Planet. It was really nice, another area to go. The classic tour of France, Maui, Japan, Caribbean, Canary Islands, and then back to Europe in the fall as well. I did that for pretty much 10, 12 years, over and over. And 97, I switched a bit more into design, did some design work with Drops, with Mistral, and I was making some custom boards for Japan. And then some of the Mistral work brought me to Thailand, actually, delivering masters. And that's how I ended up having the introduction to Cobra, and the idea came to come and help them out over here. By that time, I had lived in Hawaii for 18 years or so and was ready for a change. So the timing was good. And I've been here now nearly 18, 19 years as well. So sort of three different areas. Grew up in Australia, moved to Hawaii, and now having been in Thailand for a while as well. So busy times.
Yeah, you just went through the whole timeline basically. But anyway, like that time when you were on the pro circuit, whatever it was, yeah, like you said, whichever acronym, and developing boards and doing, you know, a lot of R&D. That was, I guess, a time where the gear was changing very, very fast, right? And the development was just it was just quick. So what do you remember from those days? How non-stop was it? How 24/7 was it?
So that period would have been the mid 80s, second half of the 80s. My friend Phil McGain and I, we had very good relations with Gastra. We were in Maui, sail testing pretty much nonstop. Different sails, different masts, different materials. Alongside of that is boards, fins, you name it. It was nonstop. Get down to the beach early, put the slalom marks out there, testing slalom boards, testing the rigs, learning how to jibe. We were one design guys and we were trying to figure it all out. Back then we were figuring out mast flex. Somewhere along the lines, we went to Tarifa, and this guy from France, TMA, he switched to a slalom board and blew us all away. So that was a big change. Somewhere a little bit later, the sails took a big turn where we had sails that were maybe built for long boards, and then we were racing shorter boards. And before you knew it, we went to really loose leeches in the tip, which you guys are still using today. But that probably happened late 90s or so back then. And then the boards grew bigger, the fins got bigger, tails got wider. Then cutouts came in, and then we had some flat a while. And then we went into formula boards. I didn't race formula boards, but I did formula board development with Micah, who was racing for Mistral. But a few of the steps along the road there would have been the switch to slalom boards, the change in the sails, the boards getting wider, fins getting bigger. And here you are today. I would look at what you guys are doing now. The boards are just flying. The rigs look amazing. You guys carry really big sails. And here comes the foiling stuff as well. It's very exciting to watch from where I sit now. It's just amazing. The sport hasn't stopped. It's cool.
Yeah.
Really impressed with what you guys are doing. It's fun.
Yeah. What are from that period, what are maybe the most gimmicky things that were totally out of the box and totally maybe didn't work, or maybe did that you remember, maybe, you know, something that sticks out, like, I don't know, a quadruple concave or a freaking whatever?
I think probably one of the more questionable ones was probably the no-nos, where we used to have fairly traditional type slalom boards that had a fuller nose and more parallel rails through the tail. It became cool for a while to have a no-nose, which was a much narrower nose. The boards were the same length, but there's a lot of curve behind the mast. Felt like you were going faster because you weren't in control very much, and very hard to lay into a jibe at high speed because of all that curve. So some people went for that, some people didn't. Phil would probably be the classic again. He stuck with the traditional shapes, and to be honest, in the end, we probably landed somewhere in between. Not as full as we used to be, but not as no-nose as was extreme for a while. And the boards then started getting shorter as well. So I thought that was a gimmick for a while. Probably some different fins. I remember the Tiga boys had some boards with some straws in them in the nose, trying to get air bubbles running through the concaves for a while. That didn't stick too well in the end. Bit of a nightmare. Yeah, different things come and going all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you mentioned working for Mistral and then, flying some master boards over to Cobra. Do you remember your very first time seeing the buildings and seeing, what was the feeling like when you walked into the factory?
To be honest, I had a bit of a realization when I was in Hawaii shaping boards and building boards for different guys and building some masters for Mistral. The boards I was building in Hawaii would get sent to Thailand. They'd make a mold and then they'd send me sample boards back to Hawaii. And it sort of came upon me at that point of like, wow, these guys can build them better than I can. They had better materials, more stable with the shapes. The way I was building custom boards in Hawaii is more traditional way, but our material selection is limited. We certainly couldn't be as repetitive as the shapes that were happening here. So it's a bit of a realization for me back then of like, it's really a hard way to keep building the boards the way I was doing it in Hawaii. And it was a bit of a realization that what they're doing in Thailand is, despite what people might think, they actually do a pretty good job. So, and then the lights came on. I was like, well, maybe I should get involved with that as well. So then I came. We had some discussions and, it looked like a good idea to come and give it a go.
Yeah. So all the way now to being the CCO, which, Chief Commercial Officer. What does that mean? Explain to people, because from what I hear around the industry, you're kind of the guy to talk to. You're the boss, basically, for windsurfing at least, and water sports.
Just backing up about where that comes from. When I arrived, I was working on the shop floor. One of my first jobs was to provide a service to the Cobra customers of building their custom boards for them. So we invited the shapers to come and build their prototypes in Thailand. And actually, I would build them for them. And then I set up a team to help me build those samples for the customers. I went more into product development, technical R&D, product setup. I ended up working a bit on the shop floor, improving the processes. There's already a very strong team here back then with a guy named Olivier who came here with Fanatic. Olivier used to work with Capello in the south of France. Kim Thompson on the surfboard side. Paolo Cicchetti came out of Italy, had the drops factories he was running. So there's already a very strong technical team here that I was able to slot in with. Ended up working more in the production side, then on the windsurf sort of business unit leader, which had an eye on the customers, an eye on the factory. The business units grew back together again. We took in kiteboarding, sea parts. We were building jet skis, kayaks, different things. And then finally surf came back into the fold. It became water sports. And as a BU leader of water sports is where I started to probably get into a bit of trouble because it was just too much. If we had a very strong commercial team and a very strong factory team, you could probably maintain that position. But in the end, I fell on the commercial side. And we have a very strong Thai team running the factory. And so, yes, I end up being a chief commercial officer for water sports, which involves windsurf, surf, wing foiling now, any kiteboarding. We are building some canoes, jet skis, different components over the time. And accessories behind that with fins, board bags, foot straps, you name it. So it's a pretty complete water sports type of unit that we've got going. And I focus more on the customer interaction, the market awareness, and trying to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. And this year was tough.
I can imagine. So let's say if I'm a brand and I want to start producing with you guys, I fly to Bangkok, I meet with you, I say I want to produce at Cobra. What would be the steps there? What would be the conversation? What would be the I don't know, minimum quantities, or I don't know what you can reveal, what you cannot reveal, but just how that process looks.
Of course, we get inquiries a few times a week. Some are from shops who are buying boards from some of our customers. And somebody has a smart idea of, well, I can probably buy the boards cheaper from the factory. It just cannot work. I mean, we work with the world's leading brands in the different areas, in surfing, in windsurfing, in wingfoiling now, and the different categories, SUP. Because to set up the products with us, to do the investment of the tooling, to come to Thailand to work with us closely, we need brands that have an international perspective. It costs money to get all this set up, the infrastructure behind it, the quality control. They have to have the stable supply chain. It's not a backyard operation. We are never been the cheapest manufacturer. People are aware of that. We're typically seen as the most reliable. And that reliability comes with the infrastructure. And that infrastructure means that we work with the leading players in the industry. So we consider all the applications, but again, we're looking for more of the international players who are looking for a long-term position in the market, who are going to help the market, not the fly-by-night. There's a lot of inquiries we get that are just not going to be effective. They wouldn't be interested in paying the setup, the development fees with us. And they may have a 1-year plan, but they probably don't have a 5 or a 10-year business plan and no marketing, no international perspective. So we select. I mean, we haven't taken on any new customers for the last quite a few years. Wingfoiling has brought up a couple new customers, but new windsurfing customers, surf customers, given the current environment, we haven't picked up any new customers in the past few years.
So you mean that a new customer comes in and has to put an investment in terms of molds, in terms of people that are going to do the QC, in terms of probably flying there to shape the prototypes, fly the masters over there, etc., etc. Yeah, is that the main? And obviously, your capacity is somewhat limited, right? So you're not that happy to take on a developing brand, let's say, a small brand.
Yeah, the capacity is a good point. There's capacity in the development window. There's a capacity in the product setup. There's a capacity in the production. So we need to consider which customers can fit within that capacity. Is there spare capacity to take on a new customer or not? And again, before we're investing time resources, we want to make sure that this customer has a real plan, an international plan, and they're going to be with us for a few years. It usually doesn't end up or not very effective if we take too many fly-by-night guys. So we do a lot of research before we take on a new customer and want to have a joint perspective, a joint vision for the future, that the time we're investing is going to be beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the manufacturing side, can you explain a regular windsurfer how the process of producing boards looks from A to Z, let's say, from the master arriving to Cobra to the board being on the shelf?
Zooming out a little bit, just to a global perspective, you know as well, we're an OEM manufacturer. We're, in this regard, purely the manufacturer. That means that the brands are doing the design, the development, doing everything that they want to find the right model that's going to fit into the market and fill the market niche. So the brands eventually send us a master for molding and product setup. We have something we call a tech file that we offer to the customers that they can select if they want a light, high-end carbon fiber board, or they might want a heavier spool board. The tech file that we have offers everything in between. So the brands shape their boards according to what their target is in the market. They select a technology that matches what their target is into the market. We'll go through a product setup process, a molding process, build samples, ideally get the samples out to the customer tests them, signs off on them. Yep, that's the shape I wanted. That's the technology I wanted. This is the package I need. Put it into production. It's pretty much how it works. The brands do all the development and marketing, and we eventually build the samples, get ready for production, and then we build to order after that.
Yeah, more on the manufacturing side, if you can reveal though, maybe like what is molded, what is hand laminated, what is
we have a small line where we do more custom and development work. But if a brand wants to do a small number of a certain board, be it a speed board where he's not going to do a few hundred, he might start with CNC custom type technology, which is a CNC core that's PVC sandwiched or wood sandwiched or single skin, vacuum bag typically. Then we might go into a little bit higher volume. So we might do what we call a semi-custom, where the board is made with a bit of a sandwiching technology with the mold, tuned up after that, and then vacuum bag the external laminate. There'll be a single shot after that. The external layers are put into the mold. Behind that, we'll move into some epoxy foam options as well. There might be some thermoforming where we have an ASA sheet or an ABS sheet in the mold. There's also PE soft, where we have a soft deck, soft bottom. Somewhere else, there's the whole surfboard realm as well, where you have custom surf epoxy boards, polyester boards, all kinds of surfboard technologies as well.
Yeah. Okay.
That kind of cover where you're going with that?
I think so. I think it's just that. Yeah. I think it's just that a lot of people maybe think that it's not rocket science to build a windsurfing board, but actually, like, compare it once you get into it, comparing to a PU surfboard, for example, with all the plugs, with all the boxes, with all the stuff. It's actually quite complicated, and I think not many people realize how it's done. I mean, I don't even like, I know you have a one-shot technology, for example, but I don't know how the hell it's possible that you kind of wet lay up the bottom and the deck in the mold. Like it's kind of beyond my imagination, even, that technology, for example. So that's why I'm asking, because I know, for you, it's pretty obvious, but I think for a regular windsurfer, he has absolutely no clue what are the steps in manufacturing a board,
Yeah, it's kind of easy, but it's not easy. I mean, we're dealing with quite a lot of variables every day. I mean, the foam core is moving. The temperatures are changing. The humidity is changing. The qualities of the dynamics of the different materials. But again, Cobra's been at this now for over 40 years. The founder of Orapan, he was a windsurfer himself, building his boards in the garage. And he's been developing his experience ever since then. People like Olivier, I mentioned earlier, he's been here for 25-something years, dealing with all the variables. And there's quite a lot of experience behind everything that we do. It's not something that you can learn from one day to the next. Behind Olivier, of course, you've got Paolo. More recently, we've got a guy named Richard Green. Everybody will know from Hawaii, was building the green epoxy Maui boards for different guys, Nevin Sayer, Port Leonard, Ken Winner. Richard used to work at a company called Boardworks with a guy named Craig Stroetzel. And he works here now with us building canoes. So we've got another guy, JJ, Jean-Jacques Debauchet. Just the experience that we've got here helps us put out the fires from day to day. Even though these technologies are fully developed and they're consistent from year to year, there's always dynamics changing, be it the shapes put a different structure into the skin or the core characteristics are changing. There's little things popping up day in, day out that you need people with experience and dynamics that can fix these problems day in, day out. So on one hand, while you think it's easy, on the other hand, it never is. There's always something going on. So that's why there's such an experienced team here.
Yeah, and you mentioned the humidity, the temperature, all the changing variables. Is it safe to say then that even though it's a production line, every board is somewhat different?
I think if you were to go all the way back to when the windsurfing manufacturing was very industrialized, when the sport was a much larger sport, there you had very big, expensive metal tooling, very precise thermoforming, epoxy foam, robotics of all levels. But a production run would be 5,000 boards. Some of our customers today don't build 5,000 boards across all their models over a year. So the dynamics of the industry have changed. The tooling is much more affordable. It matches the dynamics of the sport, where the runs are lower. So it's a different animal than it used to be. I mean, the number of boards produced per year are a fraction of what it was back in the 80s, when we had much more mechanized, expensive machinery building the gear.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't want to drag you into, into more of that then, I guess. You mentioned the numbers. This is, yeah. I'm shy today. I don't know. I don't want to push you too much. But last info that was available semi-publicly, I guess, said something of Cobra producing around 40,000 windsurf boards, similar amount of SUPs, 200,000 surfboards a year, something like that. Is that just maybe nod or not, if that's more or less where it's at, and what the tendency is more or less of the market, whether you see, the end numbers kind of growing or sort of declining or plateauing, like it's probably for the last.
I mean, the numbers you've got there are on the radar somewhere. There's a couple of those numbers are more close than others, but the trend has been over the last few years that windsurfing was not growing. I have been involved in a group in Germany called World of Windsurfing, which is Windsurfing Industry people collecting this information. So back then we used to think that in the 80s there were 400 and something thousand boards a year. The number that came under the table, 2008, there might be 80,000 boards a year. More recently, the numbers you have aren't too wrong. Having said that, more recently, be it COVID, there's a few things going on. One with, in windsurfing, the foil boards having a huge impact. I want to say I think the Windsurfer LT program is getting more people on the water again. Those things are helping windsurfing. SUP has probably done really well with a good recovery from city people wanting to get outside. It's an easy access water sport that can be done on the lakes around big cities. I think composite boards are rebounding a bit in SUP. There was a big swing to inflatable boards there a few years back. And here comes wing foiling. Is a huge booming thing right now. We've been spending a lot of time also in the surf market. We had a good success with developing not only the PU polyester, but we got some advanced epoxies, and with our EPS technologies, we're able to bring a really good epoxy EPS solution to the market in surfing. Those customers said, well, that product's so good, why don't you develop a better PU polyester classic surfboard for us? We've been doing that the last 2 or 3 years and had a bit of a breakthrough there. So that side of the business in surfboards is booming as well. So, and then after that is motorized. So we've got a few things, not only covered, but I think windsurfing, IQ foil, Windsurfer LT, wing foiling, development in technologies and surfboards. The motorized sector as well is something that's starting to really take off as well. So,
yeah. Let's get into what everybody wants to hear in this interview. Do you personally think or feel that Cobra gets a bad rep in terms of durability, or in terms of,
Yes and no. I think most people realize that we produce what the customers set up and specify. For each of the technologies, there's usually a standard, a starting point of this is the technology, this is the basic layout you should work with. Some customers might develop that this way for optical reasons or that way for structural flex. And then at the end of it, you might come down to a pricing discussion. So the price point might not be hitting where the customer wants, and they may start playing around with the layouts. And do I really need that bit of carbon there or that bit of Kevlar over there? What if I substitute this or that way? And it's all about aiming at the market niche. And we work together as best as we can. But sometimes we can end up pushing one part of the envelope too far. And that can come with consequences of some structural. But to be honest, I think in the big picture, it's the rarity. It's not the common. I mean, overall, I don't think we do too bad of a job. Not perfect, but overall, I think that the boards we make satisfy the market reasonably well.
Yeah, you mentioned the brands, and where do you draw the line of liability between the brands and the manufacturer like yourself? I guess there's certain technologies you just want warranty, but there is also things like the starboard bioresin, for example, that I don't know if it wasn't thoroughly tested or what, but it turned quite a big percentage of warranties, didn't it?
Yeah, that one we work quite closely with the brands and quite openly with where we feel that things are okay. And if we start to see a risk, we'll raise the flag. And we are fairly aware, again, with all the experience that we have. And the norm is we don't have such problems. But of course, in our position, when there is a problem, yeah, we get shot down pretty quickly. The bioresin is to be honest, not that transparent, not that cut and dry. We use bioresin not only for starboard, we use it across the board. So that wasn't necessarily a starboard topic, and it wasn't that cut and clean. It was something we were using openly. We still use it. So
yeah,
bit of not sure the public perception on that one.
Yeah, I just wonder if it ever gets to you, because it's different being in the factory and being on the beach a little bit, and how these urban legends kind of grow, from one mouth to the other, like the bioresin thing, that it was a total flop, and now you're telling me you're still actually using it, or some people would say, Cobra boards are this, Cobra boards are that, and I think this is your time to kind of explain to people that it's really a Cobra board can be 1,000 different things, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it would be really easy to run a company like this and standardize as much as we can and have very standard layouts and all the boards look the same. That would be the easiest, but that's not what we're trying to achieve. We try to let our customers maintain their individuality, develop their different niches. And inside of that, some are more successful than others, and there's some risk. We have quite an extensive, what we call an outgoing QC process, where we're randomly testing boards from time to time. Whenever new materials come into the company, they get put through the full testing system that we have. We do as much as we can to eliminate the risk, and then there'll be even batches where, be it bioresin or be it normal resin, there'll be different batches that have different properties. PVC foam, EPS, there are variables coming all the time that we've got to be testing day in, day out, that we reduce the risk, reduce the variables, and maintain overall that things are on track and we're a reliable manufacturer.
Yeah. So what do you think the number one reason would be for Cobra, despite some of these reputational things and some of this, maybe some slight hiccups here and there? I mean, Cobra remains the market leader for 20 years now. I mean, different factories seem to come and go, and Cobra is always there. What do you think? Where do you think that success comes from?
That's a good question. I've discussed it recently here when we figured we were going to have this discussion, and I figured this question would come up. So I've discussed it with Danu, the son of the founder, who's our CEO now, just to get his take on it as well. And to be honest, windsurfing is in the DNA of this company. I mean, Cobra is a windsurfing brand. Vorapant, the founder, was a passionate windsurfer. This all started with him building his own boards. A lot of the key players, the technical people here, are coming from the windsurfing field. Even Kim is our surfboard specialist, Kim Thompson. I know Kim from Torquay in Australia. He had a brand named Watercool. And one of his early team riders was a kid named Jason Polakar. So even Kim, our surfboard specialist, has links back to windsurfing as well. So this windsurfing thing is deep in our DNA. We've been, again, building boards for over 40 years. And I think the breadth of the products that we do gives us mixed input and mixed experience that allows us to have a broader take and a broader perspective on what we're doing. We're not only focused on this type of windsurfing board, but we've got a wide range of windsurfing boards, beginner boards, racing boards, everything in between. Surfboards over here, canoes over here, jet skis over there. There's cross-linking of technologies and ideas, finishing, laminating techniques, that we're not just the windsurfing guy, but we have a very deep windsurfing background. And that wide range, I think, keeps the experience stable, keeps things on track, but also allows us to manage the ups and downs. We might have a lower year in windsurfing, and surfing might be going stronger, or there might be the canoes are going stronger. But again, if you're only building one product type, you're much more susceptible to keep your volume going, to keep your staff busy, to maintain your quality. So it's not an easy one, but I think having that breadth of product, the diversity of people working for us, allows us to keep things on a fairly even keel over a period of time.
Yeah. And how do you approach that market position in terms of, competitors popping up here and there? Like you recently purchased I'm sorry, excuse my ignorance. I don't know the name of the factory in China with concrete molds that Paolo Ionetti was behind. So you purchased one of your small competitors. Rumor has it you weren't too fond of Patrick producing in Ukraine. Your own employee started his own factory in Thailand. There was a couple of factories in China, that were trying to start up or did so successfully. How do you approach that? Is it case by case? Is it generally like a more, aggressive approach towards your brands, saying, look, if you produce your school board there, we won't produce your salon boards here or whatever? How does that look like?
I think case by case is the right way to put it. And to be honest, the focus is on us and not on, there's always going to be competitors out there. There's always going to be startups. There's a reason that Patrick's building some hollow boards Eastern Europe on a very limited number. But the focus for us is to focus on what we're doing, provide better solutions. We work a lot on the one-stop shop, the logistic advantages of you can buy your school board, you can buy your freeride boards in 2 or 3 different technologies. We can get the foot straps, the pads, the stickers, even bringing a dynamic in there now where we're starting to do some sail manufacturing. So again, it's us trying to bring solutions to the customers more than worrying about different factories that are out there, usually who are specializing in one part of the market or another. We keep an eye on those things, but honestly, the focus here is how can we do a better job?
Yeah, you're a hard man to provoke. I've been trying for 30 minutes now. Okay, let's move on. How and capacity?
Keep going. You might get there.
Yeah, capacity.
What's that?
Capacity. How do you like a project like IQ Foil comes in, and you keep tabs on what's going on in the market. There's going to be a new Olympic class and whatnot, but all of a sudden, Starboard comes and says like, okay, we need 5,000 pieces by December. How do you deal with that? Do you have to hire people? Obviously, you need to invest in tooling, or they need to invest in tooling again, and molds and this and that. But is that something that is welcome, or because it's business, or is that more of a headache? Let's say.
A good question, and there's definitely a huge congratulations out there for the starboard crew, because they've brought an Olympic board to the market that is actually a good board. People like it, and people want to buy them. People want to ride them. That's I think a huge spin-off, a huge success story for windsurfing. It's going to get more people back on the water. People are enjoying the board. I see pictures from the events, the first events. It's just fantastic what they've done. Very, I think, a great spin-off coming for the sport. For the factory, we love those projects. It challenges what we do. We think we're good at providing those solutions for customers with scalability. Our tooling, our team here, putting in quality checks in place to maintain the standards for Olympic boards. These are things that the IQ foil demands the attention, and we love a project like that. During the time of COVID, has been more challenged than it should have been, but it's going quite well. We're building plenty of those boards and shipping every month, and it's just great to see the impact that stuff's having on the market. Really, really good. Well done by Starboard.
Yeah. You mentioned COVID. Some of the challenges, like right now, for example, I know that you, because of kind of back orders and a shutdown in the COVID period prior, like a couple of months ago and whatever, you kind of had to make some hard decisions, like not producing certain batches of boards and not basically not delivering the amount that maybe the market has a demand for. How does that process look like in terms of, okay, you realize you're not going to be able to deliver? What is the first thing that you would cut in terms of, okay, we're not going to produce that?
Yeah, that's it's a story of a couple of years where when we went into COVID, demand went down. Nobody actually knew what was going to happen. If you go back 18 months or so, what was it, April, May of 2020, there were no orders. Shops were closed. Nobody knew what was going to happen. We had to reduce the capacity in the factory because, again, our customers didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to happen. And then, sure enough, 3 or 4 months later, the orders started coming through. And the first thing that sold out was all the inventory in the shops. All the inventory our customers had got sold through. So the supply chain was pretty dry. So then the orders started coming back bigger than where they were before COVID. Then we, as you said rightly, the orders were coming in bigger than we could produce. So we have an annual capacity reservation system with our customers. And when we can't produce to what people need, we like to sort of manage that fairly as best we can. Never perfect, but we try to satisfy each customer as best we can and reduce a little bit evenly by percentage across the board. So we've been through a period now the last 12 months, ramping up, pushing up, hiring more people. Then we did, unfortunately, in the middle of this past year, we had a COVID outbreak in the factory, which pulled us back a little bit again. That we've gotten through. We are testing 200-300 people a day here, and we've pretty much got it under control. We've had no new outbreaks for the last couple of months, and we're starting to be able to match our production capacity to the demand. So this past 2 years, I hope, is behind us, and I'm looking to a more satisfying year next year where we're actually able to build what our customers are needing across the board. So fingers crossed we can keep that going. Yeah.
One thing that maybe comes a little bit in that subject, or maybe I should have asked also before, you kind of categorize your customers into groups by how much basically they order, correct? There is There's gold customers, silver customers, platinum customers. Is that purely by orders? Is that because then I would think that when something like COVID comes, the smallest customers get hit kind of the hardest. You say you do it evenly across the board, but obviously if you're running a business, I mean it's a business, right? In the end, it's not a charity. So I would kind of maybe think that
the grouping we do of customers is more across the product group, the market sector. So we have a windsurfing, windfoiling group. There's a surf group. There's an SUP group. From top to bottom, yes, there are some customers are bigger than others. But to be honest, each customer plays their role in the market and they have their niches. We try to be fair. We try to do things by percentage. We don't try to favor one and then kill the other. I mean, when we take a customer on, we have a committed relationship with our customers. Some of our customers have been here for 20, 30 years. And we don't take on new customers from day to day. So when we have a customer at Cobra, we try to take care of them, and we don't take care of this guy better than that guy. We try to be as fair as we can across the board.
Yeah. How do you measure success of the Cobra factory? Is it just pure numbers, turnover? Is it customer satisfaction? What's the, yeah. Well, at the end of the day, what do you think a successful year is?
The mission statement that we have across the executive team here, you're sitting down, so is to become the most customer-friendly and innovative composites facility in the world. That's the mission statement. And of course, behind that, we have a business planning in process that we work with our customers on capacity reservation. How many boards do our customers need next year that generate into revenues and margins and all kinds of business language behind that. But customer satisfaction is right at the top of the list here. And granted, that hasn't been easy the last 2 years, for sure, with the ups and downs of COVID. But the focus remains of keeping our customers satisfied and keeping, we like to refer to our customers as part of the family. Again, a lot of our customers have been with us for, particularly in the windsurfing sector, more than 10, 20 years. Surfing is more some new faces there. But even some of these surf customers have nearly been with us for 10 years as well. So we don't jump from brand to brand. We measure a lot by customer satisfaction.
Yeah. Another slightly hard topic, I think, for a board manufacturer. I mean, producing boards is probably one of the least ecologically friendly thing there is, basically. I mean, styrofoam, resin, it's all very, very chemical and very, let's say, yeah, not eco-friendly. And this subject is doing the rounds online and, in forums and stuff. And do you think that ultimately producing boards that would last a lifetime would be the most ecologically friendly, rather than trying to play with materials and having, 20% bioresin, which, in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's a step, but maybe it doesn't that doesn't move the needle, or producing less with more durability, or I don't know, like, what's your take on that? I know there's a couple of statements on the website and you guys are trying, but in general, I mean, it is a dirty process, isn't it?
Yeah, the sustainability topic is a hot and heavy topic here at the factory. Our CEO, Danu, he has an absolute passion for sustainability and how we can run the factory more effectively. We've set huge targets for the team in the factory of how we can be more environmentally aware, use less water, use less electricity, generate electricity through solar, create less dust. All these things are measured, and tremendous improvements over the last couple of years. The targets are there for the next few years as well. On the website, there's sustainability links to the sustainability reports that we've been doing every year, the last few years, for people who want to get a bit deeper into that. But onto the products, we're testing non-stop different bioresins, different fabrics that are coming from glucose or bamboo or coconut or different processes. Basalt is another one in there. Water-based paints instead of traditional paints, algae foam, bloom EVA instead of traditional EVA. We have a huge window on how can we do that. I know the R&D team right now are building two pushing the envelope products. One is with using the most products that would then be recyclable, and then another one that's using the most biodegradable or such products like this. So the focus, I have to agree with you, there's a window there of build in certain categories, stronger boards that will last forever is one way to look at it. Having said that, there's another part of the sport where the shapes are evolving that you want to be able to develop and bring new boards to the market. Somewhere in there, you want to have boards that are going to be less harmful and will be more recyclable at the end of the day. Something just on the radar is this recyclamine resin, which is an exciting one that we've been playing with, where we can build a composite product, either maybe be the molds that we make out of recyclamine, and then we're able to take that mold at the end of life and melt the mold down. The plastics that come out of that then be used to do injection parts. We can make eventually inserts or mask boxes with the plastics. The fibers that come out of that, we can actually completely recycle and build the new molds with. So there are quite a few things out there that people are working on that not one day to the next, but we've definitely got an absolute vision on how far can we take that. We can get 100% recycled cores, for example. There's a lot going on out there that we are committed on and focused on. How can we be more environmentally aware and keep pushing the envelope with that side of the sport as well.
Yeah. Another hot topic from the internet. The boards are too expensive. Everybody's making millions on the boards. Cobra is making millions. The manufacturers are making millions. We are the ones getting buying. The customer gets scammed, buying the board, etc., etc. Probably should have touched on this when I asked you about the technologies and stuff. But do you see a way of building cheaper boards, and why not?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier about the tech file. There are the creme de la creme. The best boards that we can make are light PVC carbon fiber sandwich, or however far you want to push that envelope, going into pre-pregs or honeycombs, or the sky's the limit of what you can throw at it. And then we come down through the tech file, and then we have less expensive technologies as well. So people have a range that they can choose. Behind the equation is not only the factory and how we're building. There's the design process, the brands, the brand structure, the distribution systems, the retail. Logistics, unfortunately, are becoming a hot issue lately with the cost of freights, supply chain complexities, making it harder for us to get materials potentially. The cost of sending a container around the world is just throwing another spanner in the works. It isn't going to help anybody, but hopefully that's a bubble coming from COVID. And once we get through this epidemic, we can start and see a normalization of these factors again. But aware of that. Some people, I've seen studies where you bought a surfboard 10 years ago, or you bought different products 10 years ago, consumer goods, or 20 years ago, and you buy them today. A lot of things have inflated a lot more than the value of a windsurf board. So some people say the windsurf boards are too cheap, but aware of that, it's a sensitive factor. And there are many contributing factors to it. I don't think it's because of that. It's a complicated supply chain, and every part of the puzzle is involved in that.
Yeah. Bruce, to get back to you personally, looking back at all that career and all those things you mentioned from a kid dinghy racing in New South Wales, Australia, to now like sitting in Bangkok in the office. Would you ever dare to imagine this would be where your life would take you? I mean, it's hell of a journey, right? Hawaii in between, professional career, Olympic gold. I mean, it's a lot, isn't it?
My father learned to sail from a family friend in Australia, a guy named Albie Bergen. They were on a working site, and suddenly one guy was going off at 3:00 in the afternoon. I said, "Where are you going?" He's going on the afternoon yacht race at the yacht club. So my father got into sailing before I was born, and I have two brothers. One of them is actually a professional yachtsman, project management in very big boats, and I ended up over here. But we both went through school thinking we'd be tradesmen. I wanted to be a carpenter. He was an electrician. He was quite talented at sailing. I ended up doing pretty good at windsurfing, and we just followed the passion, followed the sport. And he lives in England now, and he still works in project management for large boats, racing yachts. And here I am working in a large composites factory. It's a long way from where we started. And no, I could never go back 50 years and think this is where I'd be sitting now. No, how did that happen?
Thank you so much for your time. I'm a little bit disappointed I didn't manage to, to provoke you a little bit more, but maybe I need to do my research a little bit better, find some more controversy and more. No, I'm just joking. Thanks so much for your time, Bruce. We really appreciate it. And hopefully this alleviates some of the, concerns and whatever that the public has around Cobra boards and how everything is done.
Been a real pleasure to spend some time with you, Maciek. I'm following you a bit lately. Excited about your progress and enjoy the development of the gear. I mean, I worked in gear development for many, many years, and what you guys are doing now, the gear you're riding, wow, really, really exciting. Wish you best for the holidays. And I saw your clip just recently. You're excited to get your new gear in the water. It was a clip from Tarifa, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, still got the eyes, for the spots.
Yeah. I used to enjoy Tarifa. It was a good time down there. So really appreciate your time and want to wish you best for the holidays and good luck with the racing next year, buddy. Keep going. You're doing a great job out there.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Cheers.
No problem, Maciek. Good luck to you, man.
Cheers, man. Bye.
So a super interesting podcast, I think, there from Bruce Wylie. And let us know who you want to hear from on this podcast. It can be a professional athlete. It can be the guys who work behind the scenes like Bruce. It could be designers. Let us know in the comments who you want to see. And if you do like the podcast, give us a thumbs up, and think about supporting the channel with a bit of beer money. It does all help, and it all goes back in to produce videos and podcasts for you guys at home. Thanks to everyone who's already supporting the channel. It's much appreciated. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe.